Andre, thank you so much for inviting us over to Madeira, your wonderful island. Let's get the backstory from the pleb's mouth. How did this come about? Why? What happened?
Well, first it was my pleasure, and it still feels surreal to have this team here visiting the island all at the same time. It was something really crazy that I didn't dream. How did this happen? It was a bit crazy. There are some little things in your life that suddenly change it all, right? And I'm a Bitcoiner, as you know, and I was just pissed off really that there were no Bitcoin literature in Portuguese. Basically, you know, every time I went to a bookstore, I didn't find anything. And then there was a time, and I was in Lisbon in a huge bookstore, and I was again searching for books and so on, nothing. And then I was exiting the bookstore, and I see the, you know, the top-selling books, and that number 8, it was a shitty book full of shit coins. You know, it was even outdated. It was terrible. You know, and at that point in time, I said, I have to do something. I have to do something about it. Maybe this is, you know, as a Bitcoiner, you want to do something for Bitcoins, so you want to get involved. Oh, maybe this is it. I can just start translating books to Portuguese, I guess, but there's so many good books in English. Let's do it. And I sent a cold DM to, to Jeff out of this little island in the Atlantic, and he replied. And that led to a whole bunch of things. But basically it led to Madeira Books, which is my publishing company now. And besides Jeff Boots' book, we have many others, including Knut's that we are working with right now, and many others. We even partnered with Consensus Network to help them spread the Portuguese books to here, to Brazil. Still working on the Brazil thing, but it will work out. So and now suddenly we have like 16 books to publish into Portuguese, which in itself it's amazing. And yeah, that was the beginning of it. Just Jeff replying to a DM on Twitter. And it led to a bunch of other stuff that I think we'll discuss.
Yes, we will. Jeff, do you have anything to add to that before I ask him about meeting the president of Madeira?
No, the only thing I would say is it just shows this community and the power of this community. And if you're a Bitcoin maxi, just everyone else in that ecosystem is your friend. Like you just feel like an immediate connection. And so Andre said, he goes, I can't believe you replied. And I'm going, why can't you believe I replied? and that just created it was a book at first, but then you start talking, and it created a friendship. And the friendship grows, and a whole bunch of other stuff happened, and so I'd love for you to tell what else happened.
Yeah, so I was in my life, right? I already was starting Madeira Books and so on, and it was just a moment of. It was another moment, I guess. Miguel Albuquerque, the president of Madeira, was visiting this space that I own. It's Co-work Funchal. It's a co-working space in downtown Funchal. And he was checking it just because of to visit a space where nomads and remote workers from everywhere come and work, and he was checking the movement of youngsters visiting the island and what they're doing. So it was nothing related. But of course, as a Bitcoiner, I accept Bitcoin here. And the president was in the reception talking about other stuff. And then he suddenly starts talking about the nomads and the remote workers and how they only use cryptos and that he wants to bring more talents to the island and more investment and companies, and that Madeira needs to release itself from being only or mainly a touristic island, so low wages and so on, that it needs to attract better talent, better wages, digital economy, let's say it like that. And I guess I seized the moment, right? And I remember perfectly just pointing at the Bitcoin accepted here sticker that I had in the reception and saying, maybe I can help. But he'll have to be open to that, to Bitcoin. And immediately looked at it and said basically the same thing. Of course, this is the future. These young people just use that. They don't care about the old money. That was like music to my ears. So I said, okay, let's do it. And he said, I said something like, I don't know, I'll reach out to some people and I'll get back to you. And I said, yeah, move. We need investment here. We need new talent, everything. Well, the same conversation. And you get in the story now. Because I basically panicked, right? Because this was, as we say in Portugal, too much sand for my carriage. So I was just like freaking out, saying, "Oh, now I need to deliver something, right?" And I called you, as you well know, and I just said, "Daniel, I need to speak to you." I think I sent you a voice message, right? Something.
Yeah, like oh, holy fuck. Call me as soon as you get this
message. Call me
message.
as soon as you can. I'm panicking here, like. And we eventually talked. I told you the story. And as a true Bitcoiner, also your reply was, "Let's fucking go. Let's make this happen." And which is amazing in itself. And yeah, we did it. So you started reaching to some people, Alan Farrington, and which led to Samson Mao. We got in a Telegram group. We were starting to figure out what was the best approach. How could we do this? I remember Samson was supposed to come to Madeira, but then it was an agenda thing. And then again, crazy idea. I reach out to you again and say, "Hey, Dan, what about we take them to the Bitcoin conference in Miami? That would be like..." Because it still needs to be orange pilled. He had the good intention, but was not quite there. Why not? Let's try this. And again, the community it was crazy. So we got Samson sending an invitation. We got David Belly from BTC Inc. sending not only a video invitation, but only a formal letter to government inviting the president to be there. Then there was a Zoom call with Jeff and Samson with the president.
You were on that.
Yeah. Surreal.
What's surreal is you being in the presidential office with all the flags, and he's in his suit, and you're in that.
Yeah. And, thanks for the compliment, but I like this color. Yes, he's he's very laid back, the president. So he actually likes to see this, like young people. I remember him. I was, I think visiting his office or something. And he usually tells us like, there comes the cool guy, no suit, no tie, nothing. Like, come in. Basically, his intentions were good, right?
Yes.
I think he can see where the world is going. He can see the periphery of the island and the dangers of being stuck into an old system. And his intentions were good. I think he just didn't realize exactly how he could get there. And on my perspective, I was just doing a good thing for the community, like for my island, for my kids, trying to guide the government on Bitcoin and not crypto. That was a danger as well that I was seeing all around. And we took him to Miami.
And in Miami, he was exposed to an incredible meeting with Michael Saylor.
Oh, yeah.
And then Max Kaiser, yourself, you spent some time with him as well. He got exposed to some of the most amazing people who were, and this is the difference between the crypto community and the Bitcoin community. Bitcoin has educators, crypto has influencers, right? And now we are here following up with this kind of mission of helping, trying to understand, and that's, let's talk about the idea of the organization.
So, it's still a work in progress, but the whole idea, and it was actually decided still in Miami, at least the first idea and let's do this. The president called me aside and we discussed how we could bring this forward.
I actually remember that moment.
Yeah?
That was directly after he had spoken to you at Seyfeddine's steak
Yeah.
dinner.
Yeah.
He called you outside of the restaurant.
Yes, true.
What did he say?
Well, that's no, André, we need to take this forward. How can we do this? And I already had a pretty good idea. I actually had discussed it with Jeff prior to it, I believe. I always thought it should be an outside organization. So the idea was to do a non-profit that, you know, Bitcoin touches everything. So I already had some ideas on how we could help Madeira do this, you know, education-wise, energy-wise, Bitcoin acceptance, merchant adoption, you know, all of that. And I pitched it to the president, basically. I said, I think this is the way to go. I think it should be outside of government. And honestly, right now I don't see anyone in Madeira with such a good knowledge of Bitcoin as me. So I would like to lead it. If you give me that power, and yeah, he accepted it. And now we're negotiating the terms and the best approach and the best strategy, and of course also de-risk this whole thing, because we're playing with serious matters here. But yeah, the way is to take it forward and take advantage of being one of the first regions, at least in Europe, to embrace Bitcoin. So.
This is why I want to bring Jeff in and ask you, like, what have you seen in the last couple of days that we've been here together, you know, throwing shit against the wall, seeing what sticks? How bullish are you for, like, what's going to happen here in this little island?
I'm super bullish because there's a will and want to be able to do this. I'm also reserved on the pace that they can do it against the euro and the EU and what that looks like. But I'm super bullish on Madeira, and I think I should probably back up and I should say what's happening kind of at the macro level. I think most Bitcoiners know this on a macro level, but not the implications of it. So when money is broken like this, and there are no good choices out of the existing system, and the existing system is going to have to continually print and save regions that are less desirable in kind of Core's idea. In other words, Germany over time is going to say, what are you doing to our standard of living by protecting Portugal or protecting Greece or protecting, and there's going to be such an uprising over time through this that the EU is going to break apart. I wish I didn't have to say that, but because of the money, people don't understand what ends up happening to people when money is this broken and they turn against each other, and it's easy to see throughout history, and it's easy to see what's happening right now, and so as that happens and that accelerates, then some countries are going to be at the risk of their economies failing dramatically. And it is a huge risk because you don't have an ability to self-sovereign anymore. And so what Bitcoin does for those is it actually moves them to a standard early, and it moves, essentially, you have 120 million Bitcoiners growing really fast, growing exponentially, and you have a network effect on top of that with Lightning adoption that's growing really fast, and a whole ecosystem that's building on top of it that is unseen right now, but all the products and services that are going to be built on top of that, and they're looking for homes. And why, when El Salvador had 532,000 additional visitors in 2022 over 2021 in the first quarter, and 119 million in revenue from those visitors in that first quarter, unprecedented numbers. What it's telling you is there's a whole pack of people that know what's coming and they're looking for places to go. And and then there's a bunch of countries that something's going to break. Things are going to break, and it's going to cascade, and it's going to get worse. And then those countries that are open to Bitcoin early are going to grab a majority of those people and businesses who are going to build a new economy and under fair rules and such on top of Bitcoin. And so Madeira can take a lead in that. And Madeira in the EU, or being close, an hour flight from anywhere in Europe, a couple hour flight from anywhere in Europe. It's a really good test bed to be able to do that, and it doesn't actually take much to move their economy. And so if you're friendly to this, ecosystem, then you're friendly to people who are building on top of this ecosystem. Where do you think those people will go? And I'm spending time on this island. I cannot believe, for $250,000, I can get a golden visa for my family, my whole family, for 10 years. And that $250,000, I could buy a home, I could buy a business, I could, but it gives me optionality.
So that's not a payment just for the visa.
It's not a payment for the visa. It's an investment in the country.
So if you come over and buy a house for $250,000, you can then apply for the golden visa.
I have a 10-year visa for my entire family that then can turn into a passport, and that gives me flexibility. And when I think about what happened with the truckers in Canada, and being in Canada and just having my name on a multi-sig wallet. And the risk of that in Canada, that all of a sudden somebody could change the rules retroactively and take your bank away. And there was a very real risk for my family of having my bank account stopped. Now, because I'm a Bitcoiner as well, it wouldn't have been a risk like somebody who was all in the existing system.
Can we just talk, because some of the plebs might not know, but this is a perfect example of what a nation state can do and how wrong it can go so quickly. The trucker convoy thing, that happens. They stop payments via the, I can't remember, what was the fiat system they were using?
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, right? Gets shut down.
So Greg Foss knew, he called me 3 days before that happened. He said they're going to shut down GoFundMe, and they're not going to allow this to happen. And with no law to be able to shut down GoFundMe, but because it's a centralized organization. And Greg called me and said, Bitcoin was designed for this, to show off what it can do. Would you be a multi-sig holder on this to be able to do this? And I said, of course. But what you realize is what ends up happening is they go after the people with the most profile, right? And so but then what ends up happening is in Canada, to me, because most people can't see that individual rights and freedoms are really important to be able to stand up for. We have a right to stand up to a government. And if you take away that right and you control that right with money, and then you make the media make a whole bunch of people look bad, you can make people believe anything.
Yeah.
And it looks like a banana republic, and we see these things all over, and we look at other countries through that lens, and we think, how could that happen in that country? But when it happened in Canada, whether you agree with the truckers or don't agree with the truckers, doesn't matter. That's not the point. That's not the point. But when it happens in Canada, in a country that I believed I was living in a democracy, but when you're voting for a party and you don't have a vote in 70% of where that party gets its money, which is through inflation, then we don't live in a democracy anymore. No. Capitalism and communism look exactly the same. And that abuse of power throughout the world, which is what's happening around the world, it has to get worse, because the only way to control your citizens is through coercion and taking away their rights. And so what we're seeing through the lens all over the world is that. So not just because we were friends, not just because of what was happening here, not just because I met the president, I and my family have been looking for, in a world that's really starting to break down, and you can predict it'll get worse, I'm looking for options, flexibility, and options. We went to El Salvador, beautiful. Look at here, option. But I'm looking for options for to be able to get on a plane at any time I want and not be under lockdown without my bank and stuck in a country before it's too late. And I could not believe that Canada taught the world that lesson on why that's so important.
And you personally, they brought the heat down on you pretty hard, right? You were removed from some boards because of this?
It was brutal. And I'd say all of the CEOs that I've supported for a long time went to bat for me. I went to, but a hospital foundation where I was volunteering my time, I went to them and said, listen, I'm going to step down just because hospitals kind of government control in Canada, and I'm going to step down. And I think it's just because the media is portraying like I'm at the trucker, right? So and that I agree with all of them. and so there were letter writing campaigns. It was cancel culture like crazy. And you're going, wow, this is brutal. From standing up for individual rights and freedoms. Unbelievable. So I could see what that looks like when call it 75% of the population is either the hidden majority and they won't say anything, or they come after you. And I can see what happens when the media is influenced by the government and based on that same thing, what ends up happening. I lived it firsthand. And so one of the hospital board that I stepped down actually had in the paper in one of their articles said we let Jeff go because his values don't align with ours. And I'm going, wow, that's rich. That's rich. So your values don't align with standing up for individual rights and freedoms. And then it was one of the most emotional moments. Out of Luda, out of Ukraine, came to me at the Oslo Freedom Forum, and she thanked me, and she said, "You, Ben, Greg, all of the people that were involved in that." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "All over the world, activists all over the world, couldn't believe that a peaceful protest had that response from the government, and so when we saw what you did." And we roadmapped exactly what you did and how Bitcoin was so important. What we realized is, and then what ended up happening is, when Ukraine was invaded, all the banks were closed, and they needed to get life-saving hard hats, vests, medical supplies out, and they had no way to do it. And she said, we just duplicated your process. We raised tens of millions of dollars instantly, and we distributed those. You said that thing that ended up happening in Canada to you, and all of what ended up happening probably saved countless lives. And so you just, wow, those ripples matter, right? And so it's waking people up to what's happening all over the world. And Bitcoin, what's happening is Bitcoin, what people thought was just Bitcoiners is now merging, right? It's now activists all over the world are realizing, wow, this can save lives. It was always about the money. It was always about the money.
Do you feel it? Sorry,
no. I was going to ask you to like.
Do you feel it was good in a way that happened in Canada?
So now, in retrospect, in the moment,
yeah,
I can't say it didn't feel very good.
Yeah, I can imagine. Not seeing those ripple effects, it's amazing.
Yeah, but now seeing those ripple effects just by doing the right thing, just by standing up and doing the right thing, and seeing that impact around the world, you never know. And again, maybe I would have never known unless she came to me and said that. But you never know the impact you make around the world, but you hope it's a good one. Yeah.
So let's bring this back to Madeira then. Like, what I've sensed the hope here because we've had some pretty amazing meetings. What have you guys taken away from the last couple of days?
I don't know. I still have to digest all of it, and it's not over yet. I'm bullish using a Bitcoin term, but I'm bullish. I think it's I think it will be really good. And but I'm actually trying to perspectivize this in a way that it can fail. We're only trying our best, and that's all we can do, really. I will do my best to make it happen on the best possible way. And
Well, it's not been a bad start.
Yeah,
But you've assembled 13 Bitcoiners from all over the world to come and help you, like, you know, push this message.
so the only reason that you would say though that it's going to happen. It's inevitable that it happens. What I think you're saying is the timing of that and what it looks like on the rollout. And because what you'd have to realize is Madeira is in the EU, and there's going to be more and more tension to try to hold things together as they break apart. And Bitcoin is one of those things that is so if Madeira came in all in and said, okay, we're making Bitcoin a currency, right? And Madeira is part of Portugal. You couldn't do that. You couldn't do what El Salvador did in the EU. It wouldn't work. But is there knowledge about how important this is at the government level here and across the government level? There's knowledge, and with that, now you can start to pave the way to be able to make sure that this is important and protected.
And it's worth the try. And as Jeff says, it's inevitable, but it's worth to try to be one of the first. And I also believe the world is breaking more and more. The manipulation of money is so in your face that it's breaking everything, right? And I do believe now, and Bitcoin taught me that money is the most important technology for mankind, and it's not good. It's just simple as that. It's not good that it's manipulated, and it's been more and more and more and more. And so my only goal is that I bring my kids and this island, if I can, and if not, why not Portugal, to be one of the first places where we can realize that and protect ourselves from the cracking of that's happening in the whole world, basically.
And when you see the companies that is now through Ego Death, I have a view of all of the companies that are being built in this space. Wow. It's mind-blowing. So most people wouldn't see this stuff before it's built or what it's coming. You can't predict what's coming. But when you're investing capital into some of these companies that they're building what's coming, and you vetted the entrepreneurs and the technology and some of the stuff that's coming, it might not still come for 12 months, 18 months, but you get to see some amazing things that, again, I've said this many times. Trying to explain TCP/IP to my parents in 1995, their eyes would gloss over. Yeah. And trying to explain Bitcoin to people, it's a protocol level, and their eyes gloss over. And it's bigger than TCP/IP because it's also money, right? So it's a merge of money and the internet. And on top of that, the new system that's going to be built on top of that, we experienced the new system. We didn't experience TCP/IP. We experienced the products that make our lives better on top of that.
Only the third layer.
Exactly, on the third layer. But all of those products, some of them are out right now. Lightning makes Bitcoin easier to use, right? Some of these wallets are getting easier and easier to use, whereas 5 years ago, this was hard to use. 8 years ago, it was way harder to use. And you can see the UX and you can see some of the stuff coming into the space. It's going to make it, essentially, this is going to fade off into the background, and we won't be needing to teach it like this. It'll just be taken for granted. Nobody teaches TCP/IP. And people are going to be delivered products that make their lives way better, and it's going to drive billions of people onto this network.
Let's put this into some context. You launched Ego Death just straight after Miami, right? I think.
Yeah, probably 2 weeks after Miami.
So let's say May.
Yeah.
We're now 20th of June. How many companies have you spoken to?
So Nico and Andy do most of that, but I think we have a database and spoken to over 160.
160
Yeah.
companies in 1 month.
Yeah.
Let's now put that in context.
Not only that, in 4 weeks, there's still closing documentation and everything else, but in about 4 weeks, our fund was subscribed, completely subscribed. In a credit crisis, that just wild demand.
Can you share numbers?
On the fund? We targeted at 30. We'll probably close at 40.
40 million in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, now let's apply that to Madeira. If you've spoken to 160 companies in 4 to 6 weeks, just 5 to 10 of those companies might set up here in Madeira if it is deemed a friendly jurisdiction.
All of these jurisdictions, all these companies are going to be scouting out what are friendly jurisdictions, and because they're building, if you think about how we used to have to be in a region to be able to build a company, but more and more stuff is moving online, and it doesn't look the same. Space travel, getting a kilogram into space in 1981 cost between $27,000 and $30,000 per kilogram. Today it costs about $800. 2 years it's going to cost $200. Call it $30,000 to $200. What ends up happening because of that price decline? You launch satellites, and now you don't need cables everywhere for internet communication. With what's happening in energy, you can have microgrids on energy. You can be plugged in a satellite, and you can work from anywhere. And what that means for Madeira or anywhere, which with strong governance, safe laws, good water, good roads, good structure, good health care. What that means is now you can take advantage of an economy that can grow from anywhere at a crazy rate. And so a lot of the Bitcoin companies are building that economy, and they don't need 5,000 people working in Madeira. They can activate through a network people working all over the world.
Although it's great to live in Madeira.
You know, so some of those people, but some of those head offices will do that, and then people will come here to gather and then go back to their places. So countries that understand what I just said about building the new on top of that are going to take a leading voice into Bitcoin, and they're going to protect it so that they can protect all the jobs and the tourism and everything else that's coming to the country.
Do you have anything further to add there? The excitement of some Bitcoin.
Because just that perspective for a small island like ours, as Greg would put it, that is just a rounding error in the middle of this world.
Let's just say 3 Bitcoin companies decide to come and set up in Madeira because of friendly regulations and good tax policies, and
let's say one of them turns into a $5 billion company,
right?
Because of that. If you just think about
our GDP is less than 5 billion.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, right?
And how many jobs would it create?
It's incredible. So even a small percentage of that new ecosystem that's inevitable, as Jeff said, and if you can capture some of that from Madeira, a ultra periphery island in the middle of the Atlantic that truly needs it for the future, it's worth a try.
Well, you got Madeira needs to future-proof itself because of what you've been talking about with the EU breaking up. It's going to happen. I believe that as well. So if you can future-proof yourself against that breakup, and potentially like the single currency, like the euro, that goes along with the whole breakup.
It goes with the whole breakup.
So then,
it was really damaging for the pigs, as they call it, the Mediterranean countries. It was really damaging. In the beginning, it may not have been, but clearly it was not sustainable. And
so I'd just like to dig into that because there's something that a lot of people don't understand on that because they follow the narratives that match their narrative. But that euro was just as good for Germany as it was for Portugal. In the beginning. But why? Is because Germany is an exporting nation, and the others are purchasers. And so what you did is you gave everybody a raise, right? You gave all of the periphery a raise, and they bought more German products, right? And who financed the raise? The German banks. And if you let it fail, the German banks fail and everything fails. The same thing is happening between China and US. The same thing's, because the global trade balance, or the global trade balance all over the world has to equal zero. And so it's a zero-sum game. And so what you have is a narrative of those terrible people in that country that don't work, when it's all about money and global flows. And so, and it's just simply not true. And then what ends up happening is the control of the money controls the narrative, right? And so the control of the money controls the pigs.
Yeah, and that's what.
And then now those people in those countries, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With no way out.
That's what they stole from us.
Yeah.
And if it's already bad that people control money and manipulate money, as we already said, it's even worse when it's not even you manipulating your own money.
Yeah.
So as it happened with El Salvador, because they use the dollar. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah, and that whole structure all over the world has to be manipulated, and it has to be manipulated at the U.S. currency. And what that means is the U.S. has to sacrifice the periphery to save itself as they go inward, and that sacrifice creates chaos in country after country after country. And you put a new dictator in, or to be able to, and that world can't work. It won't work. And it's breaking down in real time before our eyes. It's the same thing I predicted would break down in my book, but it will predictably get a lot worse. It'll just keep on getting worse, and people will think it's the people. That's my biggest worry is, as this breaks down, you want to blame a person instead of a system that's going to and why you want to blame a person or another state is because it's easier to convince your people to go to war with that other state.
Yeah. You have to externalize your enemies.
You have to externalize your enemies. And so I kind of why we do this thing we do, and this is probably typical for all Bitcoiners, is probably been also why I created Ego Death, is I realized I have no influence in this system, and it's going to get this much worse, and I'm tired of talking about the system.
Yep.
I'm going to build the new system as fast as I can, and bring on billions of Bitcoiners through products that make their lives better. And I'm going to put all my energy into creating the parallel system to build to the other side. And when you see some of the meetings we had today, and you see what that looks like, and people really understanding why that's a necessity and why that's really important, gives you hope. Yeah.
No more yelling at the clouds for Jeff. Let's talk about the price action since we've been here in Madeira, because it's been quite amusing to watch the thing fall out of bed and people going crazy, running around with their hair on fire. The 11 or 13 of us, we're just so freaking calm about it. Like, it doesn't matter, this is what Bitcoin does. But then you see people like Rubini or Krugman or their cronies come out on Twitter and start going on about how the price is crashing and how this is the end of Bitcoin. What people need to understand is, like, that's just the number, that's the price. And we talked just recently with Greg Foss and Larry Lepard, and they were talking about the amount of leverage in the system. Yes, the price sticker might be going down. We know that, and we can see that. But every day, the amount of participants on the network is going up. And that's what the fiat economists, the PhD macro fiat economists, have no idea of, that they don't get it.
Anybody who's measuring Bitcoin price from a different price is measuring the system from a system, right? And so just like you measure your house in fiat dollars, and you don't see that your house is coming down every year against Bitcoin and it'll eventually fall to its utility value, you're measuring from the system that's being destroyed, and dollars are being destroyed. And as they contract currency to pretend that they can stop this from happening, stop it or slow down inflation, those dollars will be destroyed in a different way. Those dollars will be destroyed in a credit crisis that'll start escalating. So if you just think about in that fiat system and all of the Ponzi schemes in shitcoins, right, as a result of this, and all of them taking leverage, massive leverage, to try to create the Ponzi schemes and yielding products. You have to ask yourself a simple question. Where do you get yield on Bitcoin? If there's no yield on Bitcoin, then where are you getting it? And it has to be a Ponzi or a long short trade, and eventually you're going to be on the wrong side of the trade. So as you lever that, nobody comes in to save you when it comes unlevered. And there's no counterparty risk in Bitcoin. So, but a lot of those holders held Bitcoin too. And so they get liquidated and the price of Bitcoin falls. But if you extrapolate that and you say, that's what happened to Bitcoin and how fast Bitcoin fell, and it wasn't holding any counterparty risk. It was just holding an asset that that had to blow it out like right now because they were failing. So no counterparty risk in Bitcoin. Then you have to say, but wait, the entire system, the entire other system is made up of thousands, tens of thousands of times leverage than is in kind of even the altcoin ecosystem, all subject to counterparty risk and failing. It is just the entire system is leverage. So what would your house price be worth, or what would your money be worth in the bank if that failed? And it fails to the ground spectacularly, which is why the government can't, or the Fed or any central bank can't let it. They have to print way more money. And it's just a matter of when they're going to, because once that starts to fall, you see how fast Celsius fell, you see how fast 3AC fell, you see how fast how fast Luna fell. The existing system falls that fast too. It looks like 2008 on steroids, where credit stops. Nobody trusts anybody, and the whole thing just collapses to the ground. So the Fed is walking a tightrope right now of pretending they can do this, and you're going to see things break in country after country after country, including in the U.S. And if they hold, this is probably the easier way to see this. If you create 40% more monetary units in a year, and when they did that, every central bank around, don't worry about inflation, right? Don't worry. And nope, not going to be inflation, not going to be inflation. We gotta stop this. And then 10 months later, 12 months later, oh my God, right? And it just keeps accelerating. Now we're going the other way. We're tightening. And everybody's don't worry. And even though the credit market is locking up and the stock market's falling, if you continued that, not 10 months later, way sooner than that, but same time, the lag time, which we don't understand from these wild moves, that lag time would start to unwind everything. Absolutely everything. The amount of joblessness, the amount of companies that would fail, the amount of credit that would be wiped out of the system, that would accelerate and accelerate. And if they were too late in saving it by yield curve control and printing way more money, then the whole system would fail. And Bitcoin in that example is actually the only money that's going to be worth anything if it becomes credit protection in that example. I don't suspect they will get that far, but what you could say is the Fed is driving 90 miles an hour, trying to judge a complex global market, looking out the rear view mirror of what happened 3 months ago, and they're gonna and so there's gonna be a bunch of policy. It's too late. Doesn't matter what they do on policy. But they're going to have to jump into this before and save the system. So they're going to have to print into hyperinflation. They're going to have to print into inflation. And if you think that inflation is causing hardship now, wait till you see what happens.
And it's at that moment in time that you have to be a workforce and your allocation cannot be zero, right? Mm-hmm. So you should start working on it right now.
Before we close this one down, let's talk about, let's give a little shout out to the plebs. What's your message to the plebs, Andre, about what's going on here in Madeira?
Well, as I said at the beginning, we're still in the first steps. We're still figuring out some stuff. What I can say is that we will try to guide the government the best way we can. We'll try to figure out within our powers, our autonomic powers as an island, the best way to make it a Bitcoin friendly place, embracing Bitcoin in a way, and educating people, local people, especially on how important this is because of all that has been said. And it's basically that.
Because it's not going to look anything like what El Salvador managed to do. Not here.
No, it will be a totally different strategy.
Yeah.
Not so radical, of course.
Yes.
We cannot, even if we want to. But there's ways.
Because there was a little confusion after the president's announcement in Miami. A lot of plebs probably got overexcited about the fact that maybe this is going to be the El Salvador of Europe. There's no way that can go down. There's also a real lack of education on the ground. So it's got to start somewhere.
Actually, this thing that happened out of pure incompetence of the government of crypto not being taxed all over Portugal was not good for us.
Okay.
And it attracted the leveraged kind of people, the scammers, the shitcoiners. They were all over Portugal and Madeira also. And that's basically what we want to protect now. We want to protect sound money, fair money. And the announcement in Miami may have led to some confusion because the president used the adopting Bitcoin term and led some people to think that we were not only fooling, because it was already a de facto legal tender all over Portugal, so that it was nothing new. It was not presenting anything new. And some people to believe that we were aiming to do Bitcoin as a legal tender, which we cannot. So there's some clearing to do, some education to do, but there are other ways we can embrace Bitcoin in Madeira.
And if any plebs are listening, what's the kind of rally cry? How can they come across and help?
Well, try and reach me out on Twitter. I think it's the best way right now. We still don't have the org set up, but I will probably share it in my personal profile as well. And when we do, there will be a web page, and we aim to do a lot with the web page actually. And you'll get all the information there. But for now, you can follow me at André Loja on Twitter. I think it's the best way.
Okay, Jeff, what have you thought of this place since you've been here for the last 3 days?
Yeah, Andre's underselling it. That's really, it's really like it's incredible. And all you're talking about is a strategy to get to the same place, and I think you have a really friendly government here, understanding the need to get to the same place and wanting to get to the same place, and attract the best companies and the best way to do this. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place that I'm very seriously thinking about getting my golden visa, like very seriously. And so I think about something like this that has all the infrastructure. Obi said, I couldn't believe this. $75, you told me too, $75 a month, and the healthcare is way better than it is in Canada for incredible healthcare. And so when I think about what this place has to offer, services, safety, clean water, health, internet service, everything that you could just build a fantastic life. in this place, and that they're becoming Bitcoin friendly and moving towards there. I think it's it has to be right up there on the list of places that you think, oh, that's a visa I want.
And you could make a difference here.
Yeah.
Just a pleb, just any pleb that comes over here and is like,
But when you when you say that any pleb, and again the pleb, I'm a pleb.
yeah.
Right? When you say, what do you say to the plebs? Andre's pleb, I'm a pleb. He reached out to another pleb, and all of a sudden, all of this happens, and it's moving really fast. All just because of an intention to do something that Andre said that I got to make a difference. And how powerful that is if you know how much power you have to make a difference in the world, it's unlimited. And a whole bunch of Bitcoiners are doing that, but they actually have more ability to just start leaning in all over and actually make a huge difference in how fast this transitions.
Lads, it's been an amazing episode. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we shut this one down? Did I miss anything? Do you think we've covered everything? We've talked about as much as I think we can talk about.
Ponchos.
Ponchos. let's talk about the national.
ponchos later.
Let's talk about the national drink of Madeira. Like, okay, Andre,
They've introduced me to ponchos.
No, it's true. It's orange, right? So it was probably going to be
it's the national
a
drink of
success or
Bitcoin.
not. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
We can make it the national drink.
Explain
of
to the
Bitcoin.
plebs what poncha is, how it's made, and then we'll talk about Jeff. You're going to tell us why you've fallen in love with it.
So they do it many ways now, but the traditional one is just it's basically done fresh in front of you, and it's made with a kind of a cachaça rum that from sugar cane that we have a lot in the island.
It's a natural crop on the island.
Yes, and sugar, lemon, honey, well mixed, and it's delicious.
All natural crops on the island.
Yes.
Jeff?
It's delicious. Maybe too delicious.
What's most alarming is like that I don't know what it is about the poncha, but it only creeps up into your mind at around midnight, and then you want to go and get a couple of those.
I feel like I've been a week in Vegas.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks guys. Really good.
Thanks,
Really good
it's
to have
great.
this conversation.
Thank you.
Cheers.